This is Cosmographia, the Randall Carson podcast. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kosmographia, the Randall Carson podcast. And I think, are we going to be diving into more about the great year, Randall?
Well, we were thinking about going in that direction. You know, we've been talking about the great floods and all of that. And I hope that one of the takeaways from our in-depth dive, which isn't over yet because there's a lot of cool stuff to really get into yet, though, is that we see these events occurring at a very significant time within the traditional framework of time, which is the great year model, which is in most cases, as we learned by going into Hamlet's Mill, is that it's tied into the precessional cycle. And we certainly know that the traditional zodiac and the succession of ages that have come down to us traditionally, you know, the age of Aries, the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, etc., ultimately have their origin in this model of temporal change, this cyclical model where the hand of the great cosmic clock could be thought of as the precessional line that connects the equinoxes, the equinoctial line, rather, that is slowly rotating at 50 arc seconds per year, making a complete circuit in slightly less than 26,000 years. And this has been associated with the model of the great year. And a correlation is seen between the great year, the cosmic year, and the annual year. So just as the annual year is, of course, based upon an astronomical phenomena, the revolution of the Earth about the sun, there's 12 months, and they loosely coincide with the time that the sun spends in each of the 12 signs of the zodiac. Let's define the zodiac. The zodiac is the 12 constellations, 13 if you include Ophiuchus. Am I saying it right, Russ?
That sounds right. Ophiuchus.
Yeah, I think it's Ophiuchus. I've stumbled over that for years, but
yeah.
But let's stick with the 12 traditional ones. So roughly each month, then the sun is moving through each one of those signs of the zodiac, right? Now, that takes 12 months. Now, the great year would be measured by the precession of the equinoxes through the same signs. However, precession, it's important. Precession, not procession of the equinoxes, because procession in the astronomical sense would be from west to east. So when we look at the sun moving through the signs of the zodiac from day to day and month to month, it's moving from west towards the east, right? Likewise with the moon, it's moving from west to east. So are all of the planets, with the exception of those temporary intervals where planets are going retrograde, which does not mean that the planets are literally stopping and backing up and going backwards in their orbit. It's simply it's sort of an illusion, if you will. It's only gauged with respect to the backdrop of the stars. But
I think that only happens to the two planets that are closer to the sun than us, right?
No, Mars goes retrograde.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Jupiter, they can all go retrograde. All right. It all has to do with the geometry of the orbits, and it occurs when the Earth is lapping. You know, everything's going around, and then the Earth laps the orbit. And
okay, yeah.
We can talk about that at some point, but without having some graphics to show it, it's kind of hard to understand. But that's a valuable thing to get into, but it's not too germane to our discussion of the great year. The point is, everything is moving from west to east, except the equinox and the solstices. They're moving in the opposite direction, so they're not processing; they're precessing. And so we say precession of the equinoxes. Now, the precession of the equinoxes, the equinox is a phenomenon that occurs twice each year when day and night are of equal length. And I think we talked about in the last episode how the equinox is actually not a day. It's just a mere moment. And in fact, like Zeno's paradox, it can get smaller and smaller and smaller depending on how minutely you define it to get it down to literally nothing. But I find a convenient duration of time might be 1 second or 2 seconds. Saying, okay, the moment of equinox, since zero time is difficult to conceive of, we'll give it some time. So I say 1 or 2 seconds is probably a very good length of time to attribute to the actual moment of the equinoxes. And what that means is if you could get it down to, say, a second, or let's say even a millionth of a second, right? What that means is on the day of the equinox, day and night are of equal length, right? Now, normally that's going to be there's going to be variations because of where you are on the planet at that moment. And again, how precisely you define that moment. Most people think of it as, it's today is the 21st of March or the 22nd of March. So today is the equinox. Well, in a very broad general sense, yeah, it's okay to say that, but that's not really true because the equinox is just this minuscule, almost nothing moment, right? But if we get it really down to just a fraction of a second, now we've got half of the day is the annual cycle, the diurnal daily cycle. Half of it is light, half of it is dark. Well, given that, and everybody watching this now, get out your calculators. I know you've got them right there at hand, right? Let's see. Check this out. Hey. All right, guys. Mike, where's your calculator? Well, at least, yeah, look, hey, check. Hey, well, okay. I got it. What a crew.
What a crew. Advanced calculator.
That's a serious calculator.
I've told you before about my flip phone. It doesn't do squat.
Mike, I take back some
it's
of those.
a phone.
Okay. You got a calculator in your phone, don't you?
Actually, it does, but it's pretty much useless.
Oh, really?
Got a calendar, too, but hey.
What, the function is useless or the operator is useless?
Probably both.
Okay. Okay, so now here's what we're going to do. We know that there's 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes per hour, 60 seconds per minute, right? 60 minutes per hour, 60 seconds. So if we go 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24, we get 86,400, which is a really cool number, right? I love that number. Now,
I know what half of that number is.
Now, if we go to, half that number, so we just divide by 2, and we get this number. 43,200. I want everybody to tattoo this number into your brain, right? This is a number we're going to be seeing over and over again as we get into the numbers, into the cosmological numbers. 43,200. 43,000. So 43,200 seconds of light and 43,200 seconds of darkness. And of course, that is defining the actual moment of the equinox to the point where it's nothing. You see what I'm saying? In other words, if we shift 1 second, is that 1 second coming out of the dark or coming out of the light? So, what would that be if we, minus 1? Then we would have 43,199 seconds on one side, and you'd have to add a second to the other side. But we're within the realm of geometry now. So we can have concepts of and ideas of things that have no temporal duration or no spatial duration at all, right? We can think of, when you're looking for the derivative, and you guys, Mike, you've had calculus, right? When you're looking for the derivative, what are you doing? Let's say you're looking at a point on a parabolic curve and you're coming in from both ways and you just keep getting closer and closer and closer and closer to that point, but you never actually get there where the line meets the curve in that point of tangency, right?
Yeah. Same with the limits.
That's exactly the same concept.
Curve,
it's
right?
the concept of a limit. That's right.
Right.
And you never actually get there.
You never reach it.
You never reach it. But that's okay, because in the real world, you don't need to reach it. You just need to get to some well-defined point of accuracy that's going to be good enough for whatever the problem or issue at hand is, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I go back and say,
The curve. You define the curve on the way to the limit that can't be reached is usually what you're trying to do.
That's exactly it. it. And so this is what I'm saying. Precession of the equinox is essentially a limit. It's a point with no spatial or temporal duration at all. It's just, but for practical purposes and in order to think about it, we should define it as something. And what seems to be a natural unit of measurement, temporal measurement, would be a second, 1 second. Let's give it a duration of 1 second and then see what happens, right? But the point here is this point of no duration is moving backwards through the signs of the zodiac. Now, when you say 50 seconds of arc per year, the current rate is actually measured a little bit faster than that, which means, like, if we did 50 arc seconds per year, that's how we can get the traditional numbers, right? So 50 arc seconds. Let's just take a look at how many seconds are there in a complete circle. How many arc seconds? Well, there's 360 degrees. Each degree is 60 minutes of arc, and each minute of arc is 60 seconds of arc. So you would go 360 times 60 times 60, and that gives you the magic number right here.
Yeah, 1,296,000.
Yeah, 1,296,000.
So if we divide that by 50, is that what you're going for?
Not necessarily. That's how many seconds are in a circle. Okay, well, yeah, so 50 arc seconds per year.
So that's how you get the 25,000.
So you divide that by 50.
Yeah.
And you get this, 25,920. And then if you go half of this, which would be halfway around the circle, right? The equinox goes halfway around that circle. You would divide this number by 2, and that's going to give you this number. Now check this out. What was the number we just had?
1,296,000. Yeah.
Right.
This is 1,296 again.
So now we have, look at, this is a measure of time. 1,296,000 was a spatial measure, wasn't it? It was the arc seconds around a circle, right? So now, if you had something progressing, some cyclical thing happening, progressing at 1 arc second per year, it would take 1,296,000 years to complete a cycle, wouldn't it? Okay, now that's very interesting. And let me just pull something up here if I can find it really quick. I think we can find it right here. And
it's also interesting. You divide that number, the 1 million, what is it, 296,000. If you divide that number by 12, you get 108,000.
108,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share screen here.
I feel like this happens a lot with precession and this stuff, where the numbers seem to, they'll float back and forth between being spatial and temporal, and it's just very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so here we have a tabulation of the Vedic ages. So these go back thousands of years, right? From some of the earliest sacred writings in history, we find this tabulation of the Vedic ages. And the key periods are the Kali, Dwapara, Treta, Satya, and the total. So you had the 4 ages, right? The yugas, the 4 yugas. And each yuga had its core period, and then it had transitions into and out of. So you had the Sandhya transition into the Kali, the Sandhyamsa, which was the transition out. So here was the duration in divine years, and here was the duration in human years. So notice first of all, right here, correlation. You have this idea in the Vedas of a much grander, longer cycle, right, that would encompass the human year cycle. Now, we know that the human year cycle is based upon a readily observable astronomical phenomena, the revolution of the Earth about the sun, right? So that's a link between the idealized model of time change, the idealized chronological system, and what we can actually see in nature, okay? So then we get the total in divine years. So, right, here's your divine years. Here's the total in divine years. 1,200, 2,400, 3,600, 4,800, for a total of 12,000 divine years. But if we go over here and we look here, the total of each of these four ages, including the transitional phases, the Sandhya and the Santyamsa, notice what we get. Kali is 432,000. Well, I just told people to tattoo the number 43,200 on their brain, right? Because I said, when we start diving into this, we're going to see those numbers recurring once again. 86,400. So take each of these two numbers here, divide by 10, and now you have 864,000 divide by 10 gives us the number of seconds in a day. So we seem to have this progression going on that's based upon a decimal system. But look what we get when we get to the Treta, 1,296,000 years. So here we have, interestingly, the same number that there is seconds in a complete circumference of a circle. So with this Treta Yuga here, essentially what they're saying is that if you think of a great circle and 1 second, right, 1 arc second of that circle, it's almost as if the 1 year coincides precisely to 1 arc second. And so the Treta Yuga, and then, of course, when you divide that number, 1,296,000, 1,296,000 by 50, which is how we got there in the first place, we get back to the precessional cycle. So in other words, the Treta Yuga is 50 precessional cycles. Now, of course, we can split hairs and say, well, that's not exact, but we don't know what exact is, because we don't know that the 50-point little bit increment rate greater than 50 arc seconds is constant through the whole cycle. We don't know that. Maybe it speeds up. Maybe it slows down, right? Maybe 50 arc seconds is the average, in which case then this number of 25,920 is a very precise, accurate determination of the actual length of the precessional cycle, or, to use Hamlet's Mill terminology, the great year. So now, assuming that to be the case, and look, hey, you can go to astronomical textbooks and all the time, and you'll see that the number will round off typically to 26,000 years, right? But it's also calculated based upon, I mean, I'm sure Kyle looked up right now, precessional rate, something like that. We would see exactly how much that little increment over 50 seconds of arc per year actually is. And then,
and do you think it's important to like, for me, this was confusing when I very first started reading about it. It had to be like, I could see the recurring numbers, but it didn't make sense to me how people were saying, look how 432, this is the same as 432,000. I'm like, those aren't the same numbers. But the point is that in this kind of numerology, the zeros are placeholders. You know, the decimal point position doesn't matter. You could see these like recurring. It's like like mirrors.
Yeah, and we're seeing things increasing by powers of 10.
Yeah, right.
And so then that, you know, to what importance or significance do we attribute that increase by the powers of 10?
Right.
That's an open question.
Yeah.
At this point, really all we can do is point out the correlations, you know, coincidences, if you want to call them that. But the fact that there is this correlation, like that, you know, that the Treta Yuga turns out to be quite precisely 50 precessional cycles, coincidence? I don't know. Or are these yugas actually rooted in some kind of greater measure of cyclical time? To me, that's the question here.
Or are they playing with Are they playing with some kind of math here? Is that what this is kind of giving you some sort of interesting, math system that does correlate to cyclical, but maybe they're not that long. I don't know. Is it why is it 1,296,000 human years? What cycle is that it's talking about there?
Well, unless they have attributed some significance to 50 precessional
cycles, which maybe implies that there's some larger cycle that we complete in 50 precessional cycles. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's almost what they're saying.
Right.
But do we have any astronomical evidence of that? I don't know. I don't know of any. But, has anybody really even looked? This I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question here. Where are we in these Vedic cycles? Are we at any particular place?
That's one of the things, it's just, it's one of those questions that's very much like, well, when do we actually enter the age of Aquarius?
Yeah.
Are we in the age of Aquarius right now? I would say no, we're not. And the reason I would say not is all you got to do is look at a map of the night sky or the sky, look where the precessional cycle is, and, it's still 300, 400, 500 years away from the moment of spring equinox actually entering the star field of Aquarius.
But if you divide the sky by 30 degrees of arc all the way around, then we could be in it.
If we did what?
If you divide the sky evenly 30 degrees of arc.
Well, but see,
we might be in that window.
Right, except in that, when you do that, that's the signs, and the 0 point of Aries is attached to the vernal equinox. So you've got the sidereal zodiac, and you've got the traditional zodiac, which are the signs. So the sidereal is actually the constellations, right? And like the sign of Aries no longer coincides with the constellation of Aries, because it did about 2,500 years ago. But even again there's a lot of fudge factor in there, because the star fields, who's to say that the star fields now were exactly the same to the Babylonians? It looks like, for example, that the constellation of Taurus is very, very, very old. But did ancient cultures use the exact same stars for Taurus that we do now? These are questions that, have to be resolved before we can really say, But this is why, to me, it's not such an important question to say, okay, when do we actually enter the sign of the age of Aquarius, or when are we actually in the Kali Yuga?
When all the wars are done.
Yeah,
that's when we're leaving the Kali Yuga.
The Kali Yuga is supposed to be like the ultimate dark age, right?
Yeah,
we'll be getting out of Aries and these warring ways to go into Aquarius. So you see that change, then we're getting close. We're not there yet.
So, and I don't know if it's that important. Maybe it is, because again, what we would do in my mind is we would look for natural phenomena that might be associated with some of these cyclical patterns. And is there evidence of natural phenomena that could be seen as periodic? Now there's a term in a lot of scientific literature, stochastic, which is basically just means random. So that's the question: are a lot of these phenomena, are they stochastic or are they periodic? And if they're periodic, which means they recur again and again, off and on, are they cyclical, meaning that periodicity is pretty uniform? In other words, can we look and see that something happens every 26,000 years? Well, then what we would do is we would look for something, 26,000 years ago, perhaps, using the present as our fiduciary point, our point of measurement, right? Our point of reference. We have to have a point of reference, don't we? So we might as well, just for thinking about this, start by using the present as the point of reference. Well, if we go back 5,920 years ago, the precession the spring equinox would essentially be at the same place that it is now, right? And then if we went half the cycle, it's going to be on the opposite side from where we are right now. And since we could say in broad general terms, the precessional, the vernal equinox is on the cusp of Pisces Aquarius, right? Half the cycle ago, or 12,960 years ago, it would have been on the cusp of Virgo Leo. Now, the interesting thing about that is when you dive into these ideas of cyclical change and the great year model, well, it takes us right directly back into the realm of catastrophism, because that's essentially a core idea that's associated with this, the belief that there were cyclical catastrophes. And that to the ancient mind, that's why this stuff was so damn important, is because there was a cosmic timetable, and after repetition of certain periods within those cycles, things happen. I think that's the fundamental core idea. So it's interesting that if we use this model and we begin to, break this down, and we take the lead from Hamlet's Mill, we assign the precessional cycle as being the origin of the great year model. And we do know, look, we know from written accounts, traditional accounts, from oral accounts, from ceremonial material, from architectural particularly, ancient peoples were very, very intensely observing the motion of the heavens, even to the point where they were obviously tracking the motion of the spring equinox, right? And when you figure you could build a huge architectural complex laid out on a landscape where you might have a solstitial or an equinoctial alignment, well, then as that is changing over the generations, you have a reference point to see that it's actually moving. So one reason that has been not accepted, in typical historical models is just the assumption that the level of organization necessary. Why would hunter-gatherers, nomadic hunter-gathering tribes, say during the last millennia of the Pleistocene, why would they have been interested in tracking precessional motion? There's no direct relevance to day-to-day or even year-to-year survival in that. What would be their motive? But if you had precessional motion being tracked, and this was the whole basis, the whole premise of Hamlet's Mill, if they were, what that meant then was that you had a priesthood dedicated to this phenomenon over many generations. Then the question becomes why? And also the motive to build large infrastructure projects that had those alignments built into them. So now you have a way of correlating what's happening down here on Earth on the human level with what's happening in the sky, and those changes, those subtle changes in the sky. 50 seconds, to give you a perspective, think about this. If you look across the diameter of the full moon, right, which is very similar, and everybody knows from a total solar eclipse that the diameter, the displacement, the arc displacement of the full moon diameter is basically the same as the orb of the sun, isn't it? Right? Obviously, it's easier to look at the full moon though than it is the the orb of the sun. Although you can look at the orb of the sun, at right after sunrise and right at sunset, which is a very cool thing to do, by the way, because it really helps to kind of get you that perspective. And if you go out, let's say, which is a great thing to do, say during a full moon, the rising of the full moon is occurring with the setting of the sun. Brad's witnessed that many times, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's really quite a impressive phenomena to observe. And if you watch the setting of the sun, what's interesting is that motion of the earth rolling away, if you're watching the setting of the sun, the earth is rolling on its axis away from the sun. That is like right at the bottom threshold of the movement that you can actually visibly see. And you can actually see very slow. You can see the sun going down. Then you look in the west, you look to the east, you'll see the moon rising up, right? So, but what I'm getting at is let's go back to the disk of the full moon. It's right at, for all practical purposes, a half a degree of arc. So if you took two lunar disks together, 1, 2, got to be careful. I don't want to spill my coffee. 2 of them tangent like that. That's 1 degree. 1 degree, right? Since the moon is half a degree, then how many full moons, like beads on a string, would it take to complete the whole circuit? Well, it's 360 degrees, so 360 times 2, it'd be 720.
720, yeah.
720 lunar disks wrapping around the Earth, right? 720. So that gives you an idea. So 50 seconds of arc. Okay, think of that, 50 seconds of arc. Since the moon is a half a degree, right? And a degree is 60 minutes times 60 seconds, so it's 3,600 seconds. And
the 36th of the disk of the moon.
It's a 36th the distance across the moon. I think that's right. I did 3,600 arc seconds. We divide that by 2, so it's 1,800 arc seconds. In other words, the distance across the face of the full moon is 1,800 arc seconds. So twice that would be 3,600. Now so then you figure 50 arc seconds per year, so we divide that number by 50. Yeah, 36 years. Yeah, you nailed it. So 36 years.
I cheated because I actually did that math earlier today.
Oh, did you really?
I did, yeah. Because you had said 50 arc seconds in the last video, and I was like, what kind of... I knew that the moon was a half a degree of arc.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what kind of reference would be 50 arc seconds? Like that maybe you could see in the sky like 2 stars close. A 36th of the width of the moon, there's no... Yeah,
so like Tycho crater, maybe?
Yeah, okay. A crater on the moon, maybe we could find if there's one that's a 36th.
It's basically 1/36 of the width.
That's a good point, yeah. But I was trying to think of... Yeah, I was trying to find like, well, how could I recognize this? And so what I ultimately thought was... You'd have to have some really sharp stones and a very precise alignment to notice a 50th or a 50 arc seconds of movement in 1 year.
Yeah, you would.
You can't have any round-ended stone.
So
that if you were lining them up, I mean, that's
so
ridiculous.
Basically, what we're saying here is that vernal equinox would move the distance of the full moon along the westward along the ecliptic in 36 years.
Exactly. 36 years, yeah.
So that might be half a degree.
That could be noticeable.
Yeah, if you watched it for 36 years. Now,
and you had very precise points to align it to.
And then if you watched for a full degree, it's going to be 72 years. Now, in the traditional models, 1 degree of the great year corresponds to 1 day of the annual year, which in the idealized sacred calendars all over the ancient world was 360 days, because they thought, well, that's the idealized number of days in a year. But due to in some tradition, some ancient catastrophe, the year length is not reflective of the ideal number anymore, right? It's 365 and a quarter days. But the ideal year, the sacred year, was 360 days, which then means we can correlate. If we think of that idealized model, now the sun would be moving 1 degree every day, wouldn't it? So now you get this perfect harmony of numbers between the various cycles if you go to that 360-day year. And
so what's the implication there? That God didn't make the solar system right? That there's like an error in there somewhere?
Well, here's the thing. What it probably is leading to is that if everything matched up perfectly, it would be just as like a static system. The fact that
there needs some chaos.
Yeah, you have to introduce a little chaos into the system to
to allow for change instead of total stat. Okay.
There we go. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So when you go to that 360-day year, the sacred year, we'll call it, and you then go the 24 hours per day, so 24 hours times the 360 days is 8,640 hours in the perfect sacred year. So there we've got, raise that by 10, you've got 86,400, the number of seconds in a day. And somebody somewhere way back whenever decided to divide. And what are we doing? We're talking about the rotation of the Earth on its axis, so that it's the solar day, so that it's taking that period. So if you mark a point on the surface of the Earth, it's exactly under the sun. 24 hours later, it's exactly under the sun again, right? Now,
that's not the same as the sidereal.
Correct, because the sun has been moving.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to take a little bit longer for the Earth, for the point on the Earth to catch up, because the sun has moved. So that's exactly right. That's the difference between like the tropical year and the sidereal year, the tropical day and the sidereal day. But that's good, Kevin. Kyle, did you?
Yeah. Kevin.
So is it sidereal or sidereal?
I think it's sidereal.
Sidereal.
I think it's sidereal.
Yeah, we've been saying it wrong for years.
Well, okay. But you got the concept. That's what's important here.
Yeah.
Not that you look like idiots when you're talking about it.
We're used to
that. So what we end up with is this really cool symphony of numbers. Now, further think about this. What right now is the average human lifespan on Earth, Kyle? For
72 years.
Well,
I mean, I know that's constantly being recalculated because we're getting older, getting healthier and healthier. Average.
Well, until recently.
Well, let's look it up. I have looked this up. And
I have too.
It does fluctuate.
It does, of course,
because there's a lot of different numbers.
Okay, I just looked it up and I got 72.6 years.
Okay.
What is the average human lifespan 2020? 78.93.
Yeah, it's moving closer to the 80s these days.
Yeah.
Modern medicine. Don't complain about it.
Let's see. According to the UN estimates, the country with the best health in 1950 was Norway, with a life expectancy of 72.3 years. So not long ago, life expectancy was 72 years. Right?
So are we aiming for 108, or do we need to knock it back down to 72?
No, I'd like to think at least we go for 108 for starters.
Well, let's aim for 108. Okay.
I'm actually thinking in terms of 144, but
yeah, we could go for 144. If we can make it to 108, I think we can make it to 144.
That's right. I know. Yes. So
I don't know if we'll be able to make it past 120 because there were.
Yeah, there was something.
There was
in
some
book.
deal that was broken, and it was like,
yeah,
you're not going to live past 120.
120. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
I read
right.
that in some old book. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was back in the days of Abraham, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was after the flood. I think,
oh yeah, it was definitely after the flood, because
you
had the long-lived patriarchs prior to the flood. Those first 10 generations leading to Noah. Remember, they were all, the young.
Many centuries. Yeah, and then after that, God was like, the limit of man's days will be 120 years.
Yep.
After that,
and then it got reduced further to 72 years.
Yeah.
So, because of modern advances in medicine and health and all of that, it's increasing for sure. But it's not really, when you go 72.3 or 72.6, it's not too inaccurate to say that average human lifespan is 72 years. So what that does is you can kind of now think of your own life. If you think of you think of an average human life, essentially is one day of the great year, right? If you divide the great year, 25,920, by 360, you get 72. So 1 degree within that cycle corresponds very closely to an average human lifespan. So now, Kyle, little thought exercise. Think of your life in terms of the great year model. Now, how old are you, Kyle?
39.
So you've passed your halfway point.
That's what I was saying. I was like, man, I'm more than halfway done with this crap already. This is great.
But so yeah, now you can think of your life as like the 4 ages of the world, right? If you've got 4 ages, each of those 4 seasons of the great year would be 6,480 years, right? 6,480 times 2 gives you your 12,960.
So I'm entering the fall?
No. Well, let's see. Your first age would be 0 to 18. Your second age would be 18 to 36. Your third age would be 36 to to what?
I was just getting
54 to 54 years. And then your golden age, your fourth age would be 54 to 72.
Okay.
Now, of course, we can, it's elastic, so we're going to stretch the thing. So really, you're going to live to be older than 72 years, right? I'm presuming. And so therefore, you're probably very close to that cusp between the second age and the third age, the second season of your life and the third season of your life. But yeah, you're definitely now entering the third season of your life. How does that feel, Kyle?
It feels great. This is the best season of my life.
It's a good season, yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah.
And I'm staring down the tube at 72 years. Damn.
Yeah.
Shit, man, what happened? Where'd all that time go?
So all the years you get after that are just a bonus.
Oh, those are all the bonus years, yep.
Yeah. Bonus years.
The divine years.
The divine years. The uncounted bonus years, right, of the divine calendar.
But yeah, so that kind of gives you an interesting perspective on your own life when you think of it that way. I love that. The springtime of your life, from the time you're born till you reach a young adulthood, basically. And then the summer of your life is that period from your young adulthood. Think about that, up to, 18 to 36 or 20 to 40, whatever, right in there. That's going to be the summer. And then you get into the autumn, right? And then you get into the winter of your life. However, it's elastic. We got to stretch that. So I'm redefining the whole thing. So 72 years for me now is just going to be one season. Yes. I'm soon. Yeah. So I've been in my infancy. I've been my baby years. I tell you, I don't.
How does it feel? How does it feel to be entering the infancy of the divine years?
Yeah, right. When we calculate in divine years, I'm just barely out of diapers.
That's right. You're just getting started.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I like the idea of living to be 900 years. I don't know. Maybe that's a little long. I certainly like the idea of living to 120, though, because
I don't know if I could handle it for a millennia.
I know. It all depends on how you feel, though, man. I mean, if you feel good. But
you're right. Yeah, if you don't keep getting older and falling apart over those 1,000 years, it would be probably okay.
For 1,000 years, you're slowly falling apart.
Slowly just falling apart more and more. I don't think that would be good. Yeah.
No, I can think of more pleasant fates than that.
That's right. Yeah.
So I am inclined, actually, looking at all of the belief systems, primarily from religion and spirituality, I definitely lean in the reincarnation camp. I do. I mean, and that's a whole other discussion for another time, but it all boils down to the belief that there is some kind of a imponderable essence to the human being that somehow can survive. Because I just have a real hard time, wrapping my head around the idea of coming from absolutely nothing and going back to absolutely nothing.
Same.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, it just, I don't know. I can't get my head around that idea that there was, and of course, think about this. You when you're a kid, now I don't know if you've noticed this. I've certainly noticed this. When I was young, I used to get really frequent, intense deja vu. And I hardly ever get deja vu anymore. It was almost like I was kept going, I've been here before. This is familiar. I've been here before, but I had never been there. I mean, you guys have all experienced deja vu, right?
I just had a very intense deja vu moment the day before yesterday, Saturday. Yeah, and I hadn't had one in a while, but it was really intense. And it was like I knew it wasn't just that the moment and the scenario had happened, but that I knew other information around it, as though I was like remembering a dream that was exactly the same, and there was more context behind it. It was really strange. That was a very intense deja vu moment.
Yeah, and see, about your age is, I mean, as I got older, deja vu, which I used to experience, like I said, frequently and quite strongly as a kid, and even as a young adult, I don't really experience it anymore. What I do experience now, though, is weird flashbacks. I had one yesterday, shopping at the farmer's market, and I was going to get some cheddar cheese. And I'm going up there, and here's the big cheese department. There's the cheddar cheese. And like I'm looking at which kind of cheddar cheese I should get. And then I'm literally like had this flashback for a moment, like just for a second. Like all of a sudden I was just out of my body, and I was like 15 or something, and I was back in Minnesota for like just a moment. And it's at the very instant that I was realized that I'm like, it's over, you know. I don't know how to describe it other than to use the term a flashback. And this is something that I've noticed that I don't get deja vu anymore. Really, I can't think of the last time I had deja vu. But I get these flashbacks where it's almost like, boom, for like a moment, I'm jerked out of the present, and I'm in some moment of my past, the past of my life. And it'll be weird because it won't necessarily be a vision, or it'll just be a sense, almost a feeling. And what that has really driven home to me is that you don't notice it because as you age, it happens so slowly and so incrementally. But if all of a sudden, let's say you could be taken for a moment out of the present and dropped back into the world of 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, there would be something different. It would feel different because the world is different. The vibration or something about it is different. And I mean, I know that the way the world felt and the way I experienced the world, say 50 years ago or 60 years ago, is different than the world I'm experiencing now. I don't know how else to explain it. It's something because almost like the subtle environment of the world is changing slowly, imperceptibly, so nobody notices it. But if you go back to previous generations, just go back and like look at like an old movie from the 30s, and you can kind of pick up on that those people were experiencing the world in a very different way than we are now. And it's not just historical matters that makes that world different.
I agree. And you hear it in speech patterns. And I mean, like you see, there are these constant subtle changes in the way people talk, and the things that they say, the way that they look, the way that they present themselves.
But all of those things are sort of just the outer manifestations of this underlying quality, if you will. And, you know, Mike and I are basically the same age. And I maybe, do you relate to anything that I'm saying, Mike, looking at back on your life from the accumulated wisdom of all your years on Earth?
I was interested in what you were saying about the deja vu. I used to experience deja vu a lot, but come to think of it, I haven't had any in a long, long time.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Your experience is similar to mine. Is that deja vu have some kind of roots in some previous experience?
Memories of past lives. Yep.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to explain deja vu, but like Kyle, you said you experience it pretty profoundly, pretty strongly. I used to too. I mean, I can actually remember several episodes where I had coming home from school one day. We lived in a little cottage out in the woods outside of Pineville, Louisiana. It had a long driveway. and I'm walking up the driveway, and I see my house, our little cottage that we lived in. There was kind of a curve in the driveway, and I'm coming around the curve, and I see that house there. And it was like all of a sudden, it was just like wham, literally where I stopped. Like, it was so strong. It was like, I've been here before. I've done this before. You know, where does that come from?
And why is it never useful? That's what I always want to know, right?
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm like ruining your speech here, but you know, for me, I'm sitting at the dinner table with a bunch of people, and suddenly I have 2 or 3 seconds where I can predict what everybody's saying. You know, I have this strong deja vu. I know what that person's going to say and know what this person's doing. Like, all of it is recognizable, and it's totally useless. You know, why doesn't it happen when it's useful? You know, what did Jeff say in our Discord? You know, I'm not always psychic, but when I am, it's useless. Right? That's what I feel like with deja vu.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't see any practical use for it. But
right, but if it happened at a key moment, you know, where you're suddenly, like, if you're driving or whatever, and you're like, wow, that truck is about to hit me, and I know I've been here before, and you could miss it, right? You could change whatever was going to happen. Maybe that would cause a paradox.
Well, that's more like psychic, or
that's what I'm saying.
Like, I don't know if deja vu is really.
I don't really have deja vu.
Yeah, for me, it's like I suddenly. Yeah, it lasts a few seconds. Yeah, well, it lasts a few seconds, and suddenly you're like, all of this I recognize, and I know what's about to happen.
I've never seen it in that way. For me, it's just like, I've been on this hill before, looking at that.
To me, it's a memory thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No. For me, it shows up sort of like a memory, but you're like, I recognize all of this, you know, and as it continues to take place, you're like, yeah, you can predict it. You know, like, that's exactly right. That's what they were supposed to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Well, it's a mystery, and to me, it's an interesting mystery, and why I used to get it so frequently and strongly in my youth, and I don't anymore. I don't have an explanation. But this business of having these flashbacks has become much more common, where it's like all of a sudden I'm feeling like I'm having the same kind of sense or perception or something that I had decades ago when I was at a certain. You know, you might get at a certain place. When I was younger, I used to call it moods. I would get in a certain mood. You know, sometimes I'd be in a elated mood. Sometimes I'd be in a more subdued mood. Sometimes I'd be kind of down or angry, or, you know, I would have moods. Did you ever have? Maybe I was a moody kid. I don't know, but that was how I used to call it. I would say to, like, my brothers, I'm in a such and such mood. You know, and it would be really just a way of, you know, experiencing the moment of existence in a way. But that's what I'm trying to get at. And I really don't know how to put it into words. When I have these flashbacks, it's literally like for a moment or a second or just 2 seconds. Always, it's very brief. It's almost like I'm feeling and sensing. It's just like I would have many decades ago. You know, like, I remember I had it maybe a year ago. We had been out, I think I was 15 years old. We'd been out, the farmer, the Reimer farm that I used to hang out and work on. The farmer, one of the things he used to do was, he had a big flatbed truck. So he would, when he had downtime between, you know, planting or sowing or whatever on the farm, he would, lay sod. And so there was these sod farms that we would go to, and me and my brothers, the boys, we would go and we would be loading all the rolls, you know, the rolls of sod up on the flatbed. And then we would sit up on the truck. We would all be sitting on the pile of sod while he drove to wherever the site was to deliver the sod. And of course, by the time we got there, we'd be totally covered in dirt, you know, completely just covered in dirt. But I remember one day we'd stop, we'd been delivering the sod, and it was a beautiful summer day. And I remember he brought, I don't remember if it was Coke or what, we had sodas. So it was probably later in the day, kind of the shadows are getting long, the sun is going down. You know, sometimes the light can be really, really special, beautiful when it gets that low in the sky.
Yeah, the golden hour.
Yeah, that golden. It was like getting on that. And it was just, I can remember, it was just this moment of sort of, I don't know, at oneness and peace or something. I don't know how to describe it. it was just one of those moments where it was just like, hey, everything at this moment right now is really, really cool. You know,
And
we were
filthy.
completely filthy, right? But we're sitting there, and okay, so I had this sense of that. I don't know how to describe it, the zeitgeist, the feeling of the moment.
Yeah.
So when I had this flashback, it was like, boom! I was 15 years old. I was sitting there with the soda in my hand, and it was that day, that feeling, that light, that moment, that sensation for like a second or two, and then it was gone. And it was really almost kind of startling to me how it really was like a flashback. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
I think all
That's
those are some disappearance of the dimension of time. You know, you're jumping back in time, or a deja vu's kind of a jumping back, a premonition's a jumping forward in time. The whole idea of souls reincarnating multiple times. You know, you're separate from that dimension. You keep repeating things. I think that's a whole show's worth of discussion there of what all those are linking to psychically.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of religions, there's a few billion people that believe in some version of reincarnation.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And, you know, when I studied with, you know, Ushu Buddharya or Swami Rama or Muhammad El Sarhan, you know, you had Brahmin, you had Yogi, you had Dervish. They all accepted reincarnation as being part of how the whole system works. I don't, you know, I think there are hints of reincarnation in the Judeo-Christian tradition. That'd be another interesting topic to explore at some point. But yeah, I mean,
everything else is cycles. Why not that?
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, and it just seems to me, what a waste that if you know, I think about, God, I've spent all these decades learning all this stuff, and then what? I'm just going to die, and it's all. Then what? Well, I got to pass it on, right?
Yeah,
but
you
still,
get one chance.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, think about, you know, Einstein. You know, what was he, 80 or something when he died? You know, I don't know how old he was, but
Yeah.
so we have an Einstein or a Newton or a Kepler, Galileo, or whoever, you know, really smart people getting all this knowledge, and then they die, and then all of that knowledge and understanding of how things work just goes with them.
Maybe they're all the same guy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
They wrote a bunch of books.
It's all the same soul.
I don't know, but these are questions that I find intriguing.
And it's interesting how you know, discussing the great year and these long cycles and these ancient traditions lead into these kind of questions.
Well, it does. It does.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking at, these cycles. So we're talking about, you know, we just talked about seasons of the great year, or seasons of a human life.
Yeah.
You know.
So we should take a break.
Let's take a break
And come back, and we'll continue on this discussion. It's
Well,
fascinating.
that is a beautiful symmetry, though, of what you said, of one human lifetime. If it's 72 years, is one day or 1 degree of that great year.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
All right. We'll be right back. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Kosmographia podcast, and diving back into I don't know. We are wherever we are going with this discussion of precession and the human condition. It's very interesting, for sure.
For once, I agree with you, Kyle.
All right. Don't need an attaboy for that. I have full agreement from Randall Carlson. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. So
Mark it on your calendar, your Vedic calendar.
So one of the books that I read back in the 90s by David Fideler, very good book, by the way, one that I think we would recommend in our bookstore, our up and coming bookstore. is Jesus Christ, Son of God, and Son of God. Son is spelled S-U-N. And he delves into the whole, the Christian dimension of these sacred numbers and patterns and proportions and periodicities and so on. Here's a quote right out of that book from page 160. Yet eon, A-E-O-N, which gives us our word eon, right? Eon, like a period of time, right? An eon. So
Yeah.
Aeon was also the name of the Mithraic god of time. And so undoubtedly our term eon comes from Aeon, A-E-O-N. I think I will look it up real quick here and give you the definition from Webster here. Aeolian, not Aeolian.
Wind.
Which is wind. Thank you, Brad. E-O-N. Boy, they make this small. Eon. Eohippus. No, that's different. Kyle, do you know what Eohippus was? See, this is right here. This is one of my big problems in life. Whenever I go to look up a word, it takes me like 40 other words before I finally cycle back to the word I'm actually looking for.
Well, I got a Wikipedia here if you want me to go through some of that.
Eon. Here it is, squashed in between. It's only one little line. It says eon, a variation of aeon, A-E-O-N. So it's just so there we go. It's just a variation on A-E-O-N. And so I'm quickly turning to A-E-O-N, A-E-O-N, and here we go. Aeon, here it is. An immeasurably or indefinitely long period of time. So that's the first definition. And the second one is just simply used in geology, a unit of time equal to 1 billion years.
Right.
But it comes from the Greek, of course. Eon, from the Greek, eon doesn't give the etymology, but an immeasurably or indefinitely long period of time. An age, they give an age as a synonym. Okay, but Eon was also the name of the Mithraic god of time, okay? Same spelling, A-E-O-N. Yet Aeon had another meaning in the ancient world, which is frequently overlooked. It referred to the vast ages, the 12 aeons or Platonic months, which make up the great year. Because of precession of the equinoxes, the sun moves backward through the zodiac 1 degree every 72 years. As we saw, the central symbol of the Mithraic mysteries conceals an astrological code related to the precession of the equinoxes. And I'm going to do a share screen here, and we are going to take a quick look at Mithraic symbolism for a moment. We've looked at some of this a little bit before, haven't we? And you guys have probably seen this?
I think so.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. Well, this, I don't even know where to begin by peeling back the layers of this right here. But, all right, so you've got the Hanged Man. Yeah, oh, man. Yeah, we should just... Oh. Kyle! Yeah. Yes, there's... We definitely need to get into the tarot deck at some point, but how we get into it is going to be an interesting question. But what you showed there, the Hanged Man, there's again layers of symbolism that really has nothing to do with fortune telling, because that's just a little a fun little distraction that helps to perpetuate and preserve the symbolic tradition that's encoded into the tarot deck, which is the real point of the tarot, which is the whole cosmological system that's encoded into those, well, the whole deck, of course, but primarily the 22 major arcana, which in terms of cycles is a cycle. You can lay those cards out in a circle, and, that final card, which in the Crowley deck is Aeon, but in the traditional decks that like the Rider Tarot deck or the Waite deck and all of those, the world would hook right back into the Fool. And of course, the Fool, that represents basically all of us go through that stage in life. I look back, I was the Fool. I totally embodied the Fool at the age of 15. I was like, I was like the stereotypical, archetypical embodiment of the Fool at the age of 15. Yet, even at that age, though, I can still recall I did have a substrate of some understanding of there being more to life than met the eye. But I survived. There was a few close calls in there, but I survived.
But in any case, you could, fortune telling could be, also talking about astronomical cycles.
Well, and now here, I think, yes, exactly. I think you've nailed it. Because look, is it a fortune? Are you a prognosticator? Because about early March, that within the next 4 to 6 weeks, spring is going to break. Everything's going to thaw out. Or reverse that. Right. It might be like here in North Georgia, well, in Atlanta area, we've hit 32, I think, 3 nights in a row. It hasn't actually dropped below 32, but that 32 is like a natural threshold. So, we can predict, and it's pretty regular. It varies from year to year. When do you get that first freeze, or when do you get the first thaw? But are you a prophet if you know how that in 6 weeks?
Yeah, only magicians can tell that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, that's the point. I mean, look, maybe
magicianologists.
And I look at look at the prophecies. What are the prophecies? So much of the prophecies are basically built around this idea of these symbolical representations of things that are to come, right? Well, in the same way, if you were amongst a society of people, Kyle, that, for example, had their memories erased in August, they would have no concept, or in July or June, so all they knew was summer. They would have no concept of winter, would they?
Right.
But if your memory was not erased, would you be a prophet if you tried to tell them that, well, this is going to change, and it's not going to be like this. It's going to be very, very different, and it's going to be cold.
They might tell that story about me far in their future
after they set them on fire.
Yeah.
After they've, exactly. But I think you get my point. I think when you look when you look at the prophecies, now I sort of almost want to jump back for a second.
I feel like I sidelined you with the card.
Well, no. That was. No, I think that was just fine, because I'm glad you did that. Because look, I could in fact jump back just two cards in my deck here in my show, and we'll see this.
Oh yes,
yes.
Oh yeah, they say.
Oh yes, yes.
Well,
number 10.
Here we go. I mean, look at this. It's all here. Well, not all, but I mean, this is, see, the thing is about the symbolical traditions is that they're so multi-layered. And you have to, in other words, typically we open a book and it's all linear and everything is on the 2-dimensional page. But with this kind of occult symbolism, if you want to call it that, which basically just is this hidden symbolism, nothing particularly evil or satanic, meaning the word, you using the word occult, right? It's almost more like a 3-dimensional thing, because you there are layers upon layers of meaning. And where in scientific work, what you're doing is you're trying to narrow the meaning for each term down to this high degree of specificity, that it's got each term has a very specific meaning in a scientific concept. You can't have a scientific term that has 4 different meanings to it because it would be way too confusing. Science doesn't work that way. This is a different form of knowledge transmission in that the symbols are basically repositories of multiple meanings where each of the meanings tends to amplify the understanding of the other layers. They all work as an integral unit, right?
That's cool.
Yeah. So when we look at this, look at all the things that are going on just in this card. Well, it's called the Wheel of Fortune. Now think of the Wheel of Fortune as being the great year. And now we have a perfect model for how it works, because what we're basically saying is that the great grand cycle is like the Wheel of Fortune. And sometimes it's going to come up, we're going to get the luck of the draw, but other times the shit's going to come down hard on us. That's the whole idea of the Wheel of Fortune. Sometimes luck is with us and sometimes it's against us. So as we cross the great cosmic streams, sometimes the luck is with us and sometimes it's against us. And when it's against us, that's going to correlate exactly with the cycles of global catastrophe. Now, and I use the analogy for like we're on a big racetrack and we're all speeding around in cars on the racetrack, but there's a couple of other roads that intersect and cross the racetrack. So there's other traffic on those roads that intersect and cross through the racetrack that we're racing on. Now, if there's other cars on that road, okay, what that does is increases the probabilities of there being a catastrophe, an impact, a crash, a car crash, right? Now, if there's just a few cars on the road, well, then the possibility is there, but maybe not the probability. You probably can sail right through that intersection and no problem. I remember one time when I was going back to an early period of my life, I think I was about 19, I had an old 1951 Plymouth Coupe, and I was driving into downtown Minneapolis, and I went to stop at a red light, and I put my foot on the brake, and the damn thing went right down to the floor, and nothing happened. There was no brakes at all.
Oh, man.
And I'm going 35, 40 miles an hour, and I sailed right through that red light, and again, the luck of the draw, there was no other cars coming across. In fact, I think I sailed through about 2 or 3 intersections before I finally rolled to a stop. So that's kind of a real life metaphor for what I'm talking about here. And this is the Wheel of Fortune. You see, now maybe if it's 3:00 at night and you're racing around the track, hey, well, at that time, your probabilities of an impact, the possibility of escaping a catastrophe are pretty high. Now, if you're going in the middle of the day or you're going at rush hour, maybe it's just the opposite. Your possibility or probability of having a catastrophe goes way up, right? Well, now here's the point about the cyclicity of it. If we're going around that racetrack and our velocity is relatively constant, well, then there's going to be a very precise periodicity to each one of those times that we go through one of those intersections. In fact, think of it this way. Think of the racetrack as being a circle, and there's 2 highways intersecting it at right angles. One is an x-axis and one is a y-axis, right? So we're actually crossing those intersections 4 times within one cycle. Now, if we're crossing at the right time of day, chances are we'll get through just fine. If it's the wrong time of day, boom, there's going to be a catastrophe. So the thing we have to bear in mind that when we look at the catastrophes is we're not necessarily going to see an exact duplication of the cyclicity of the system. Because sometimes within that cycle, we're vulnerable, but nothing happens. We escape, we scathe through. Other times, boom, we're going to get impact. But the point is that the timing of it passing through these intersections is very uniform. So the prophet is the person that knows we're about to cross an intersection. So we need to take special precautions, take certain measures that will reduce, like we got to put down the cell phone and pay attention, right? whatever, because we're going through an intersection. And hey, that same prophet is the guy who's going to know, hey, yeah, guess what? We're coming up on 5 o'clock. So it's going to be rush hour. So boom, things could happen. So we better make plans to find a sanctuary where we might be able to ride this thing out until we've gotten through the intersection. And if we get an impact, it's like, hey, put your seatbelts on, for one thing. That's going to help, right? So I think that's how the concept we have to kind of hold in our heads is that we're looking at these periods of vulnerability, the cycles of vulnerability, if you want to call it that. You know, we know that this happens every year twice when the Earth crosses the Taurid meteor stream, right? I mean, we are more vulnerable to impact around Halloween and around late June than we are from that particular meteor stream at any other time of the year. Now, at other times of the year, we might be vulnerable to the Leonids or the Draconids or whatever the case may be. But, you know, the Taurid meteors seems to be the one that has had the most profound role in planetary history and evolution for the past 20 to 30,000 years. And in fact, the last cycle of glaciation really began, if you look at the numbers, and I can start pulling stuff up here, probably won't have time, we'll save it for next episode, but start pulling the numbers up and you're going to see that it's precise, almost right at 26,000 years ago, there was a major shift. And it was shifted from an interstadial climate, which was very similar to a little bit colder than now, not a full interglacial, but an interstadial that had maybe lasted, guess what, about 26,000 years. And then around 26,000 years ago, the final phase, the late Wisconsin, was inaugurated within generally conceded to be a millennium or less. And post 26,000 years ago, what you see is rapid climate cooling and very rapid, massive expansion of worldwide glaciers. And then those glaciers grew. It took them till 20,000 years, 4, 5, 6,000 years to reach their maximum. Then they stabilized that throughout the age of Scorpio, right up until about 14,600 years ago. And then there was something that happened, was a catastrophic melting and a warming. And then that warming led to a shrinkage of the glaciers. And then almost precisely at half a great year ago, 6 cosmic months ago, if you will, 6 ages of 2,160 years each, or 2 seasons of 6,480 years, boom, right on the button, whammo. The cosmos opens the windows of heaven and the pestilence pours down and decimates the earth, wipes out half the species of great megafauna, almost terminates the existence of man. Yes, it does. And we can see the emerging evidence, and we've talked about this some, from all over the world of a major population crash and bottleneck. The reason it doesn't show up genetically as an obvious signal is simply because there were many small pockets of survivors dispersed around the globe. So you had a considerable amount of genetic diversity, even though the whole entire population of the world may have been less than 10,000 in the aftermath of the Younger Dryas Boundary series of catastrophes. But right on the money, boom, at that cusp, 12,900 years ago. And here's the thing. Through reading the traditions and studying this ancient science, if you will, of cycles, I had realized by the 90s that the date of 12,960 was probably right on the money. In fact, that's why we've got the transcripts of the 5 lectures I gave at Warren Wilson College in 1996, where I described the whole thing and the pinpointing the date, and that date was probably a date of a major impact event. Now, that could be because, see, here's where we could get into the cyclical nature of this. We could be looking at cycles of activity that are actually beyond just our own solar system. I think ultimately we have to be looking at galactic cycles. And we can look at those galactic cycles because what's the rotation period of the Milky Way galaxy? Well, it's very close to 260 million years, right? So think about that. Is that a coincidence, or is that part of some pattern of replication by powers of 10 throughout the natural order of the universe and the cosmos. I don't know, but it might very well be that. And that amplification by powers of 10, is obviously endemic to our own anatomy. We perceive the world in terms of 5s and 10s, but the world is built around the number 6. So through the human world, the interaction of the human world and the material world, which we could actually think of as the crystalline world, because that's what the planet is essentially, is metal and molten material and crystal and rock, right? Is the marriage of the 5 and the 6. And that's going to take us into an explanation that we're going to get into, whether we get into it on the Kosmographia or the new Randall Reveals short form that we're going to do, which has no specific structure, by the way, so it's very flexible how we do it, which is specifically going to be devoted to just short, concise, potent revelations of specific information and data and insights culled from these ancient traditions and how they might relate to this scientific context that we've been developing over the last year and a half. But so going back to this, look at here. You see, we've got the human figure, right? We've got the eagle, we've got the lion, and we've got the bull, right? So what is this? There's Taurus, there's Leo, there's Aquarius. The eagle, remember, Aquila, the constellation of the eagle, rises with the scorpion. So in terms of using it as a temporal marker, a chronological marker, a chronometer, if you will, it serves the same purpose as the scorpion. It also, of course, in astrological lore, it has the symbolism that it represents the scorpion and the eagle represent a kind of a polarity, a bipolar power within nature that has both a terrestrial ground level, like the scorpion crawls on the ground, but the eagle flies in the sky. The implication being that there's this bipolar force in nature that has a terrestrial ground-based component and then a celestial component. So this is the scorpion, right? The eagle. So we got Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus. So here are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, which basically have this cosmic cross. And so every 6,480 years, one of those cosmic cross, which is going to be the equinoctial line and the solstitial lines, you have to picture not just the equinoctial line rotating, not just that, but you have to picture that there's a whole cross that's rotating. So then obviously that 6,480 years periodicity within the cycle marks one of the 4 seasons. And so here we have the symbolism of the 4 seasons. Then, of course, we have the Sphinx, which also carries over the same symbolism because the original Sphinx was composed of those particular animals, right? Then back up. There we go. Okay. Then we have the serpent. Notice the serpent is descending, as if descending from the sky. Here we have Typhon. Now, what do you know about Typhon from mythology?
Don't know anything about Typhon.
Typhon, you could go look up Typhon. Typhon was considered usually represented as a great dragon. And there was a war in heaven fought between Typhon and Zeus, or Typhon and Marduk, depending on which variation of the myth. So we've got the Sphinx, the serpent, and we've got Typhon. If we look on the wheel itself, you'll notice there's your cross, but you've also got your 6-fold division. And within that, you've got astrological symbols, you've got Greek letters, and you've got a Yud, a He, a Waw, and a He. Yud, He, Vav, He. Yud, He, Vav, He. What does that say? What does that spell? Yahweh. Right, Yahweh. This is Yahweh. And then you've got Taro, which is Tarot, right? Which is the teaching. Tarot is the teaching, right? But if you go counterclockwise and you start at the T, you get Torah. That's the Torah or the law, right? If you start at the O and you go counterclockwise, you have O-R-A-T, orat. That's the word. You see, you have the word goes forth with the teaching, and that teaching lays down the law. And then you've got, if you start at the R and you go clockwise, you have R-O-T-A, rota, which is the wheel. You see, all of these meanings tie together. If you start with the A and go counterclockwise, you have A-T-O-R, which is Ator, which is the goddess Hathor, the goddess of the year, right? And you have all that symbolism that goes along with Ator. So you see how these multiple layers of meanings are woven into this? Well, and then when you merge these meanings, it's just like building a sentence. You could say a really profound sentence, right? One of the great quotes from the great minds of history or from the great sacred literature. And if you cut it up and separate the words and you scramble the words, there's no meaning. Nothing is conveyed. There's no changes within your perceptions or your consciousness, right? But if you arrange those words in a certain way, boom, meaning emerges, right? And you've all read something that has, you've read something that affects you, and that now becomes part of your permanent perception, your permanent conception of reality, right? Just from reading something. You've had, I mean, I know I have. I've read things and I go, wow, and that stuck with me. It is the doom of men that they forget, right? Break that up, scatter the words, it has no meaning. But when you put those words together in a certain way, and that's the idea here, when you start working with symbolism, the symbolic language, which is the language of the birds, by the way, now you have to begin to take the individual parts and begin seeing how they fit together. And when you get that right fit, you'll know it, because there will be synergy. You'll experience directly the synergy, because you will suddenly, meaning will emerge where there was no meaning before. Or just like decoding a cipher, where you're trying to figure out a cipher. So, maybe a substitution cipher, and you're trying different things and you're not getting it. And then finally, boom, oh, I got it. You see it. And it's self-referential and self-validating, in the sense that you know it when you find it, because suddenly you experience meaning where there was no meaning. The meaning is actually a tangible thing. Now, of course, the most effective ciphers of all are the ones that have 2 layers or more, where, I've got it figured out, because look, here we get a meaning that we can interpret when we arrange the letters of the cipher in a certain way. But then that, you see, that is merely a veil to cover the real meaning, and to confuse you, so that you don't know what the real meaning is.
Yeah, so you think the job is done.
Exactly.
Pursue it further,
exactly.
Yeah.
But so this card right here is filled with so much meaning and so much symbolism. And the fact, notice again here, look here, it's the 10th card, isn't it?
It is. I was wondering about that.
Yeah. Well, that's not just accidental.
Looking at this, speaking of hidden meanings, I'm sorry, I'm fumbling around here. Looking at your card here, I don't know if you're aware, but the same symbols in the 4 corners also represent the 4 gospel writers. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are represented by each of those symbols.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. Thanks for that, Mike. And
what do
Mike,
they call that?
Being a
in
Catholic,
the
Mike,
Church?
you should know that well.
What do they call that, Mike? Those 4. Isn't it called something when they're
They've got
together?
a term for it, yeah.
I don't know just offhand.
Okay.
Well, I know their references in the Catholic Church are called the quator temporaire, I think is the word, tempore. In fact, let's see.
Well, I do want to throw this at you.
Yep.
You told me to look up Typhon. So
Yeah.
Typhon attempted to overthrow Zeus for the supremacy of the cosmos. So says Wikipedia.
I like that. To attempt it for, well, right. And so Zeus and Typhon fought this great war in heaven. Marduk actually Typhon's
A cataclysmic battle.
A cataclysmic battle. There we go.
And aren't they represented by like that fight is Hercules and is Typhon?
Is it Hercules and Ophiuchus?
Ophiuchus,
because Hercules is right on top of Ophiuchus.
Yeah, Ophiuchus is Typhon,
and he's holding the serpent.
Yep,
Yeah, or those could be interpreted as
as his weapons.
As
just like we
weapons.
Learned from Dave Matheson.
Right,
that's right.
That's right. Matheson goes through that stuff. Yeah, it's really cool.
And one of the things
I also found it interesting. I'm sorry to
go ahead. Go ahead.
The back on that card. Let's see the what was it? Well, I just forgot what it was. It had something to do with Egypt. Oh yeah, okay. So the serpent, the symbol of the eagle and the. Which you were saying is Scorpio, right?
Yeah.
The eagle,
yes.
Or the vulture. It kind of looks like a vulture. I don't know. The symbols for Upper and Lower Egypt are the
serpent and
the serpent and the vulture.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think about the idea that Scorpio could have been symbolized as a serpent in Egyptian astrology or astronomy. Like a cobra, because it has the wide neck at the top instead of a three-headed serpent, which is sometimes depicted as. But anyways, sorry for the side note. Move on.
No, side notes are good. I believe quattuor tempore. Let's see. Let me go back to
quattuor tempore.
Yeah, look up quattor tempore. I think is what. I should have some notes on it here somewhere. I don't know where they ended up, but let's see.
Changing of the seasons, maybe.
Well, it's there are these the
Ember Days.
Oh, it's a Catholic ritual, so Mike should know something about this. Let's see. Here's a quote. Okay, here we go. Here's from Hamlet's Mill, page 62. On the zodiacal band, there are 4 essential points which dominate the 4 seasons of the year. They are, in fact, in church liturgy. Is that how you pronounce it, Mike? Liturgy. In church liturgy, the quattuor, Quatur, quattuor, which obviously means fourfold, tempora,
time
and 4.
The 4 times.
What?
The 4 times, right? Is that
something like that? And there, maybe you could look that up. I mean, it's Latin, I think we could say. Quatur is one word. Tempora. Okay, so they are in fact in church liturgy, the quattuor tempora, marked with special abstinences. That's all I've got.
The Wikipedia says they are also known as the Ember Days, or quarterly periods of prayer, fasting, and liturgical calendar of Western Christian churches.
Okay. So there we go. So here it is.
Fasting.
It's so you brought that whole framework of looking at time into these particular Christian observances. What Van Deschend and De Santillana are referring to as special abstinences. And then they say, so I'm going to read the whole thing again. On the zodiacal band, there are 4 essential points which dominate the 4 seasons of the year. They are, in fact, in church liturgy, the quattuor tempora, marked with special abstinences. They correspond to the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. So, boom. And then, going back, I'm going to show you, this was a carving, an ivory carving in a church. Can you still see this?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so this is an ivory carving in a church. And here you see, there's the bull, there's the eagle, there's the lion, and there's the angel representing Aquarius. right there. So
what's in the middle there? Is that a?
Well, it's a horse.
Oh, okay.
But
with a halo, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's just put that guy in there. So here is the quator tempora, right here. The fan, the propeller that's turning, right? And then look at the cross. So here we have the symbolism of the cross. You see the arms of the cross coming out, lining up with the zodiacal wheel. And then we'll jump backwards.
And it's like the winged symbolism. Like whenever you see that, it's sort of suggestive, right? That it's in the heavens. You're
in the sky.
looking into the heavens with the winged creatures.
Yeah, with the winged creatures. Well, doesn't that invoke Ezekiel?
It does.
The visions of Ezekiel?
Yeah.
All right, we got it right here. Ezekiel, first chapter. I'm going to stop the share for a moment. Ezekiel, first chapter. Now it came to pass, as I was among the captives by the river of Shebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire infolding itself. Also, out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. As for the likeness of their faces, the 4 had the face of a man, the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yes.
It does.
Now, as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth, by the living creatures, with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl, and they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. How about that? Now that's Ezekiel. That's Old Testament. If we jump to the Apocalypsis of St. John, the revelation of St. John the Divine, 4th chapter. After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet, talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And round about the throne were 24 seats, and upon the seats I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold. And before the throne there was a sea of glass, like unto crystal. And in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 beasts, full of eyes before and behind. And the first beast was like a lion, and the second beast like a calf, and the third beast had the face of a man, and the 4th beast was like a flying eagle. So what do you make of that?
It does sound, well, some of it sounds astronomical for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does. Come up hither, and I will show thee things that must be hereafter.
Right.
Like, I'm going to show you what's to come here within these cycles.
These cycles.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, this cycle is coming to a close.
it is, and this is probably a good way to bring it to a close for this episode.
Right.
But we will be certainly picking up and exploring these themes and regularly doubling back, because everything we've laid out up to this point is the groundwork. So now when we begin to start delving into some of the more esoteric and arcane dimensions of knowledge, we'll actually have this base of reference. So when we're talking about symbolism of world-destroying fires and floods, we'll know that within the natural order of things, these symbols are made manifest. I think I'm going to show one last card. If I have it here handy, I think I'm going to show one card that I think is really quite explicative. And you showed the Hanging Man, so we'll save that for another one. But I'm going to show one. This is from the Builders of the Addendum deck, and the Builders of the Addendum deck is very similar to the Rider-Waite deck and the other traditional decks. There's so many tarot decks now, which is a cool thing, right? However, in those original decks that we've inherited from the Middle Ages, that's where you have this succinct, specific body of symbolism that, yes, absolutely, that symbolism can be adapted for different times and different ages and different places. But you have to be able to go back to the core, the essence of from where it started. And so this Builders of the Addendum deck is very true to that idea. So let's just take a look here.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, immediately we're given an astronomical correlation. Age of Leo, age of Scorpio, right? Now, here's the great angel, the seven-pointed star, refers us directly back to the prophecies of Revelation. On the nameplate, the Yud, He, Wow, He, Yahovah, the same name that we found on the Wheel of Fortune, right? Well, there is an organic progression that occurs between these four letters. It's a formula, which we'll talk about. But it starts with the Yud, which is the seed. It's the symbolical seed that's planted that yields the rest of the meaning. In fact, the Yud is the seed of the entire Hebrew alphabet. And all of the Hebrew letters are but elaborations and permutations of the fundamental Yud, which is the seed from which the whole alphabet grows. And there are, of course, 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet coinciding with the 22 major trumps in the tarot deck. And that correlation of 22 and 22, of course, is completely intentional. But notice what this great angel of the apocalypse is doing, pouring out the waters of the great flood. And here is, right, what is this? This is the bowline. Yeah. This is the fire from the sky.
Carrying the fire from the sky.
And notice that it's pointed down towards the earth.
Right, pointing the torch of heaven down towards the earth.
Yes.
Could that also be Aquarius and Leo?
Well, this could be Aquarius, yes.
Yeah, he does look like Aquarius with the
certainly it could, and I think that's valid. And then
it's also the one foot on land, 1 foot in the water thing is interesting there too.
Isn't that interesting? That's worthy of exploration right there in itself. The other thing, notice the Yuds, the seeds emanating from the descending fire.
Get some grail going on there.
Yes, absolutely. Now we get, see what I mean? How the layers of meaning?
Yes.
Right. And then what's this thing over here?
Well, it looks like the sun, but then it's got like an eclipse going across it. It's a transit.
It's got how many?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is it 7?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 7 of them.
Yep.
7 points of the star.
Right.
And then we have the rainbow. And we remember what the rainbow is, the symbol of the covenant, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. Now that covenant, that whole idea of the covenant is definitely worthy of deeper investigation.
And he's got one of those doctor things on. Is that a
Well, the
Old school
doctor
thing
things.
the doctor used to wear right on his forehead as a mirror.
The circumpunct.
Right. Well, that's the symbol for the sun right there.
Right.
He's wearing
yes.
as the crown chakra's got a symbol for the sun. So yeah.
What about the glories or the halo surrounding his head? Those look they're asymmetrical and looks like it has some kind of meaning to it.
Well, it probably does, Mike.
Yeah.
It probably does.
Same with the ones coming out of the sun thing. They're
The sun thing.
probably should. Yeah, whatever that is.
Oh, this
there.
down here, that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is that thing?
Yeah.
I've been wondering about that since the first time I saw this.
There's also icy mountains in the background there. You notice? That?
Yes, good
Yes.
good point there, Russ. Good point.
That was Kyle. Glaciers.
Yeah. Now, look what happened. Let's just roll to the next slide. Who's this guy? And look what he's holding in his hand.
What's in his other hand?
Is that the fiery torch that he's holding?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
he's got that weird hat on. What is that?
That's
thing?
that's the Phrygian cap.
The
That's the
Phrygian cap.
Yeah,
That's right.
he's wearing a Phrygian cap.
Well, Brad's wearing his cap too. We gotta
Okay.
close this show out. Yeah, we could look at these slides all day.
Kyle?
We gotta stop.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. That guy.
that guy. And he's hanging,
He's seeing the world in a new way.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
hanging from a
and you'll notice that this is the Hebrew letter right here,
yeah.
Oh,
the letter chet, which has the value of 8. But we'll save that, Moy. We've got
Yeah.
plenty of stuff to
There's
dive
so
into.
much. We've got to stop.
more.
Yeah, once I start going with this, I don't want to stop.
No, this is a good way to leave a cliffhanger and a hanging man.
Yeah,
This is
there
good.
we go. So, yeah, this has been an interesting little exploration of ideas
Yeah.
here. And
Definitely.
so, yeah,
That's
so
not
next.
because I want you to stop, but it's just because.
Oh, I
it's
know.
almost-
We got to
it's almost
stop.
1
It's
a.m.
getting late here.
Yeah.
And next week, we're doing a live.
That's right.
All right,
We're live.
cool. That was fun.
Absolutely.
So, did anybody tune in?
Oh yeah, there were lots of people watching,
Oh, good.
and then of course it gets watched afterwards because it's there.
Oh, right. Okay.
But yeah, there were 300 or 400 people watching live at one point.
Oh, wow.
I saw that
Really?
too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll grow. It'll keep growing. When people are learning we do live stuff, they'll be there. So it'll be great.
All right.
So yeah, any announcements? RandallCarlson.com for all your Randall Carlson needs.
Yep.
Anything else?
Absolutely.
CBD
Yeah.
from thegods.com.
CBD
from the gods. Check it out. RC ships free. Promo code.
Oh, hey, yeah, look.
Get your CBD oil.
Listen, we've got a thing coming up exclusively for Cosmographians. There's going to be a coupon code between now and Christmas for fans of this show, 35% off
All right.
all
Oh,
their
hey,
products.
Brad, you better get on getting this video out.
And
Up to 35%. They're not
okay, yeah,
all
thank you.
35.
Up to 35%. Up to 35. Okay. See how just one little word completely changes.
It changes everything.
It changes everything. Yeah. Up to
Classic
35%
marketing, guys.
and free shipping.
Yeah.
Free shipping. Yeah. So
All right.
definitely.
And the 5% of the proceeds are going to go to the Randall Carlson. So
well,
that's
Oh,
great.
fantastic.
5% of the proceeds are going to go to the team to help us do whatever it is we're trying to do, whatever we deem worthy of doing. And boy, people, do we have some ideas and things in the works for 2022, which we're going to be sharing with you over the next month or so.
All right.
All right,
And
boss.
the number
Russ
of,
and I will be doing another Randall Responds, right? Brad and I will be doing another Randall Reports. Got some interesting new things just to report. Atacama Desert Glass and other things. So, yeah, stay tuned. A lot going on, and it sure was good to see you guys and hang out with you tonight.
Yeah.
Likewise, man.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Definitely
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, we'll get this one out soon, and there's all kinds of new products in the Randall Carlson shop.
Oh, my God,
New
yes.
designs, many new products, and 20% off those through the end of the year 21 here. So
And
we're gonna have this one out before that sale ends, and also the Montana trip coming up in June. Running out of spots there. There's only 6 or 7 left, so you got an inkling to go into the territory where the water was backed up to create some of the flood damage. We're going to do that in middle of June 22. Contact at thecabin.com. There's a new tours and events page being constructed on randallcarlson.com, so that'll be access for it also, but may be sold out by then. But we're working on several layers of improvements to expand and get more information to you through the randallcarlson.com website.
Yeah. One last thing. Coming in March, we have the follow-up to our Lower Cumberland tour, Cumberland Plateau exploration. We're going up into the middle regions in Tennessee, and we're going to be looking at some really remarkable geology and landscapes and things that really very few people are really even aware of is there. But March is going to be a good time because the leaves won't have come back yet. We'll be able to see a lot of the landscape, the underlying landscape, and there are some truly remarkable things to be witnessed there. So that's coming up in March. So check it out.
All right. And
wheels,
new hats.
Wheels within wheels. And
Yeah.
Little fancier embroidery with the new Cosmo caps. So get you
I
one
like
of those.
that.
20% off is now $20 instead of $25.
All
Check
right.
that out. They're awesome. Cosmo cap.
Anyone?
Go get your What's Up shirt and your Cosmo cap. randallcarlson.com/shop.
That's right.
All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Well done.
Great
That was
show.
awesome.
Yeah.
Good night. I can do it now. Really peeling it back.